All right. Well, last season, heading into training camp, Olabisi Johnson was coming off a rock solid season and looked to have a good rapport built with Kirk Cousins. But in training camp, he gets hurt. He goes on the IR, misses the entire season. But all of a sudden, an opportunity opens up for someone to go out and take K.J. Osborn, who was buried on the receiver depth chart and was only really used sparingly on special teams at most, catapulted himself into the conversation. And by year's end, finishes with 50 grabs, over 500 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So when you look at the roster as it stands today, which sophomore player, or maybe not even a sophomore, just which young guy who hasn't produced much could be the next KJ Osborn and kind of explode on the scene for the Vikes in 2022?
So this guy is not like a super duper young guy, but he is still a younger guy, and we've talked about him a lot. I'm going to say Irv Smith Jr.
Love it.
Yeah, he is looking for the type of bounce back season that like fans dream of. Like he's trying to get out there and get after it this season. And if he stays healthy, I believe he can. Just because of, and we've talked about it before, just how Kevin O'Connell uses the tight ends and how he has used tight ends in offenses in the past that he's run. I think Irv Smith has a chance to be like a 50-plus reception guy, 900 yards receiving, 9, 10 touchdowns. Like that would be ideal for Vikings fans to see out of him production-wise. I think Irv has a lot of talent. I mean, he has some catch and run abilities as well. Like the dude is super talented. You just kind of want to see him put it all together. And we've seen flashes from him. And, this is maybe not necessarily what you really saw from like a KJ Osborn in that regard, where he just kind of came out of nowhere, it seems like. But at the same time, this is a guy that, missed all of last season with the knee injury, and it kind of not really got forgotten about. But with Tyler Conklin's production last year, you're just like, oh, okay, now there's no Conklin, and now it's really all on Irv Smith Jr. to be the guy at tight end. And I'm looking forward to seeing him have a big year this season.
Still only 22, maybe 23 years old. Not even scratching the surface yet. And top 50 pick coming out of Alabama for a reason. I mean, this guy's got the goods. Versatility that a lot of people are going to be very intrigued to see how Kevin O'Connell uses him, not just inline, but standing up out in the slot, maybe even out wide as well as a wide out. He should be able to hit the ground running once he's fully healthy and gets kind of comfortable with this offense. So I'm glad you mentioned him because I'm super excited to watch Irv Smith in this Kevin O'Connell offense specifically. I think with sophomores, Darrisaw is obviously the easy pick, but if I'm digging deep in the bag of these sophomores and I'm just throwing a dart up on the board, a guy who's just got a lot of raw talent and could flash and make some plays is tight end Zach Davidson. 6'6", 250. Guy balled out his final season at SMU, 15 touchdowns, and shows he's got the ability to make some plays when given the opportunity. And that's what we're talking about here. Who's got the opportunity, like when Olabisi went down and KJ Osborn had a chance to step in? I think when you look at that tight end depth chart, how many times have we brought that up on this show? After Irv, it gets bleak, man. So if he were to go down again or miss some time, Davidson could easily beat out Ellison or Johnny Munt at some point and steal some reps and see the field, again, just like we saw with Osborn. Sometimes that's all it takes is just an opportunity, and the rest is history. Darrisaw, obvious pick, deep sleeper, going with Zach Davidson. It got me thinking, too, who's the most underrated Vikings player nationally, from a national standpoint? A guy that Vikings fans know is great, but you don't hear a ton about on NFL shows or the top 100 lists or Twitter, etc. You brought up Adam Thielen last week as that guy, but is there still another underrated player that doesn't get a ton of love from the national spotlight?
To me, in watching Vikings games in person, I pretty much was, almost at every game last year when I got here. And watching in person, I think one of the most slept on or underrated players on the Vikings is Eric Kendricks.
Yes.
All the dude does is make plays every game. Like, the dude is phenomenal. Uber athletic at the linebacker position. One-handed interceptions. Like, the dude is a sideline to sideline runner, tackling machine, just all around disruptor of the Lord have mercy, I can't talk today. Just all around disruptor back there in the defensive unit. And I think he's going to find a way to shine even more in this unit. And then also, he's been one of the ones that were most vocal about, the team having been a fear-based organization and all the strife that, it seems like the players were kind of playing through and dealing with. Like, he still went out there and balled out every game. And so there was a stretch where he had interceptions in multiple games, like consecutively last season. And I really just don't see, when the All-Pro teams came out, when, the Pro Bowl came out, like, what more do you need to see? I know guys like Darius Leonard are, the more flashy picks, and, Bobby Wagner's been doing it for a long time and all that. But so is Eric Kendricks. Like, the dude just goes out there and makes plays. And I really just don't see a lot of people nationally talking about his ability and the things that he does to disrupt games and impact games.
Yeah, so glad you brought him up, because you're right. When anybody brings up the discussion of the best linebackers in the NFL, you eventually get to EK, but he's never discussed as that 1, 2, maybe even 3 top tier guys. And I just don't get it. All he does is produce on the field, coming out of UCLA, Dick Butkus Award winner, best linebacker in football, teams up with Anthony Barr and Mike Zimmer. They go on to put up the best defense of the NFL in 2017. And he's just been a pillar of this Vikings defense. I could still say the name Harrison Smith, too, from a national standpoint, should be regarded as the best, if not a top 2 safety in the NFL. I know he's getting up there in age. I know he's a tick slower. But you watch this year, I think under Ed Donatel and a fresh start here, he's going to show people why nationally. Fans know it here. They've seen it for a decade plus. But nationally, why he should be regarded as one of the best players, safeties at his position in the NFL. One more other guy I got to mention, Brian O'Neill. Is one of my favorite stats. I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago, found it on Twitter, Brett Coleman. Brian O'Neill has started for 4 years since his debut as a rookie and only given up 6 sacks across more than 4,000 snaps. He averages 25 pressures allowed per year and has not missed a game since becoming a starter 4 weeks into his career. Maybe that's even more impressive than the pressures and sacks allowed. He's always on the field. He never misses time, and that's so critical for offensive linemen and their chemistry together. For reference, good tackles like Orlando Brown gave up 6 sacks just last season alone. So that number is just kind of nuts, man. He's been a stud right tackle for years now, and he just doesn't get a ton of love because, he plays a boring, unsexy position, right tackle. But he's been so good for the Vikes and Kirk Cousins' protection and just doesn't get that national love like he should. But he will, though, in due time. I'm sure he will.
But that's a testament to him, though. Right. When you have guys on the offensive line that you don't necessarily talk about, that's a good thing. Because usually when you talk about guys along the front, you're usually talking about how bad they are. And because he's not mentioned a whole lot, is because he is so good at what he does. But let me go back to Kendricks really quick. Mm-hmm. Kendricks was a first-team All-Pro in 2019, okay? He played 15 games, 110 tackles, okay? He had a half of a sack and no interceptions, okay? Forced 2 fumbles, right? Last season, 143 tackles.
Jeez, man, what are we doing?
5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and I think both of those interceptions were one-handed. How is he first-team All-Pro in 2019?
I get it.
And he's not even third team. Not like doesn't get on the All-Pro list at all in 2021. Like, what are they looking at?
Make it make sense. I don't get it.
What are the voters looking at? Like, he had a half of a sack in 2019. He had 5 sacks last year with 143 tackles, 2 interceptions. What are they looking at?
93 days until Vikings football is on the books, 6 weeks before the start of training camp, which takes place at TCO facilities. The calm before the storm is happening as we speak.